The idea of double is a very old concept and one that has brought us many famous works and theories throughout the ages. When speaking about double, we refer to the presence of two realities coming from a single one, able to assume multiple forms, which are going to be studied in order to understand the reality itself more thoroughly. With regard to psychology, the first scholar who has shown interest in this topic is Sigmund Freud, a neuropathologist born in Freiberg in 1856. He is also famous all around the world for coming up with the concept of psychoanalysis, a cutting-edge discipline which has the aim of curing psychotic diseases in a new manner.
According to Freud, psyche is the union of three parts. The conscious, which is the sphere of the awareness. The preconscious, the group of past thoughts and feeling which can be recovered easily. The unconscious, which is made up of inaccessible contents unless we follow the psychoanalytic method. In addition, he enhanced the idea of human mind with the so-called psychic regions by using the metaphor of the iceberg. The id, the most irrational part, the source of the deepest and unstoppable desires. The superego, the most unconscious area, created with the repercussions of the education pupils receive in the initial part of their life. The ego, the most reasonable and conscious part, which mediates between the other two. In Freud's opinion, these three forces interact with each other and, as a consequence, they determine the individual's personality. If there are any kind of issues with their behavior, it is necessary to dig into the unconscious and find the most appropriate solution.
As well as this, Sigmund Freud spoke of primary and secondary process, which are two ways in which the human consciousness works in the interpretation of dreams, 1900. The primary process is the action of the unconscious, which releases a free flow of impulsive and straightforward psychic energy. On the other hand, the secondary process is the operation of the conscious and preconscious, in which the river of energy is somehow controlled. The secondary process, created as a consequence of the morality, education, and rules we have been given, has to make sure that the primary one stays silent as long as possible. Nevertheless, sometimes it can make its voice heard in a specific hostile context.
In the first years of the 20th century, Freud elaborated a groundbreaking theory of sexuality which had a vital impact on scientific discussion in later decades. Its most well-known component is the so-called Oedipus complex, which gets inspiration from the homonymous ancient Greek myth. According to it, King Laius and Queen Jocasta, who reign over the city of Thebes, are told by the oracle that their own son will kill his father and marry his mother in the future. Therefore, they abandon him, but he is found by some shepherds and then brought up by the monarchs of a foreign country. As an adult, Oedipus murders a passerby with whom he had an argument. He was Laius. After that, he gets to Thebes and defeats the Sphinx, a monster who kills everyone unable to solve his riddle. As a consequence, no sooner did he become king and marry Jocasta, his mother, than a plague torments the city. The oracle states that it is because of Oedipus' immoral deeds, who then blinds himself, whereas Jocasta commits suicide. Starting from this story, Freud professed that between the age of 3 and 5, children develop a solid love for the parent of the opposite sex, and at the same time, a robust hostility towards the parent of the same sex, who is considered as a potential love rival.
With regards to the idea of double, we can cite the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, written by Robert Louis Stevenson in 1886, whose founding element is the split and divide itself. The polite Dr. Jekyll escapes from his rational and moral identity with a potion that transforms him into the irrational, evil Mr. Hyde, allowing him to taste the fascination of a world of instinct and sensuality. Hyde is responsible for a series of crimes, but escapes detention as a second dose of the potion, transforms Jekyll Monster's other self back into the respectable doctor. Jekyll's growing remorse can do little, as he finds it increasingly difficult to free himself from his evil other, Mr. Hyde. This horror story ends with the suicide of Hyde, who can no longer escape justice, with the discovery of a letter written by Dr. Jekyll to his friend and lawyer Utterson, which finally reveals the whole mystery of the double identity. In conclusion, Dr. Jekyll appears to be the embodiment of the respectable Victorian gentleman, whereas Mr. Hyde is the embodiment of the uncivilized part of humanity, that side beneath the formal bonds of civilization. Jekyll recognizes his desire for scandalous behavior, but in the rigid community of the Victorian England, these behaviors would have been unacceptable. For these reasons, in order to protect his reputation, he lived out his dark desires through an alternative identity.